Mike Brown, the former FEMA director.
Joining us here is the former FEMA director.
History, I think, was very unkind to you, my friend. Very unkind.
Mr. Brown, thanks for being with us.
This is Michael Brown Unplugged.
Hey, welcome to this edition of Michael Brown Unplugged. I'm really glad to have you with me. So let's get started. I got some bizarre stories, some funny stories, and some serious stories. Not necessarily in that order. But I got to start with this story. And before you jump down my throat about making fun of or mocking a 900-pound man, I just want you to hear the story out first. Apparently, this 900-pound guy was set to be literally, now, sometimes people misuse the word literally, but in this case, the use of the word literally is literally correct. This guy was set to be literally cut out of his home in Virginia on Monday afternoon in what is described as a huge operation to bring him to court to face drug charges. Now, I don't know just stick with me here. Authorities later confirmed that obese suspect, 900 pounds. Can we say morbidly obese? I'm just thinking here that the use of the words in the story, that this guy named Kenneth Hicks, age 48, was to be taken from his home in Emporia, Virginia, but he never made it to the U.S. Federal District Court in Richmond, Virginia, because mid-route he was diverted to the VCU Medical Center, according to the Richmond Times-Dispatch. The FBI and the Marshal Service had been asked to join local ambulance, fire, and emergency personnel. Now, think about this. So, normally you have a guy that has been arrested on drug charges. You don't really have ambulance, fire, and emergency personnel involved. You've got, in this case, because it's federal charges, you would have the U.S. Marshal Service. So the U.S. Marshal Service would show up with a warrant, arrest the guy and take him to the federal district courthouse in that jurisdiction to face the charges. But here, according to, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be laughing. According to, well, maybe I should be laughing because you know what? I haven't used my hashtag bite me in this podcast series, I don't think yet. So here I'm just, if you're mad at me for laughing, hashtag bite me. The FBI and the U.S. Marshal Service have been asked to join local ambulance, fire, and emergency personnel in a plan to get Hicks out of his home. The plan included cutting a hole in the side of Hicks' house after bracing the structure, removing trees to clear a path, then mechanically lifting him out. I should have thought ahead before I started the podcast about I needed that, that sound that heavy equipment makes when it's backing up, or the FedEx truck, the beep, the beep, beep. Can you just hear that? I mean, think about this. Cutting a hole in the side of his house, bracing the structure, removing trees, and then mechanically lifting this defendant out in order to get him to the federal courthouse to face drug charges. Wouldn't it just be easier to legalize drugs? I'm just saying, wouldn't it just be easier here? The monumental effort, according to the New York Post, I mean, everybody's covered this story now, in terms of print media. Nobody, I don't think anybody will cover it on the cable news channels, but hey, who knows? You will get it here on Michael Brown Unplugged. The monumental effort was at Hicks' request so that he could get to court, where he is expected to plead guilty in a cocaine conspiracy case. The suspect was warned that if he pleads guilty, he will be taken straight into custody and transported to a secure medical facility. He is one of 7 people charged with conspiracy to distribute and possess more than a pound of cocaine. I'm just going to make a wild guess here and say that this guy, if he is indeed guilty of a conspiracy to distribute and possess more than a pound of cocaine, he's probably in the possession mode, more so in the distribution mode, unless, of course, he's one of these. Wouldn't this make a great movie? Or at least a scene in a movie? He's probably not out on the street corner selling nickel bags of cocaine. My guess is there's either a drive-up window or people just come to his home. The thugs show up at his home. He was allowed to make an initial court appearance back in March through a video link and then asked for help to make the latest hearing in person. According to the Richmond Times-Dispatch, once the medical personnel confirm that the defendant can be moved, the FBI will determine the best way to accomplish this while ensuring the safety and well-being of the defendant, as well as ensuring the safety and well-being of all governmental personnel. The FBI and the U.S. Marshals may determine that it is necessary to open a large hole in the wall of the structure in order to facilitate the use of a device. Come on, let's just be honest. The use of a device. Why don't we just actually use descriptive language? When you think of extracting a 900-pound object, or in this case, a 900-pound man, extracting that from the confines of a home, when you think of the word device, what do you think of? I think of a forklift. The statement stressed that all steps will be taken to minimize damage and protect the defendant's property. Assistant U.S. Attorney Pete Duffy told the judge Monday afternoon that the hospital would not give a firm time on when Hicks could be released as they were conducting toxicology tests. U.S. Magistrate Judge David Novak continued the hearing until Tuesday next week at 1:30. Hicks is expected to arrive in an ambulance. That's one honking ambulance. For the proceeding and appear in the loading dock of the courthouse for his own safety and dignity. I get the safety part. The dignity. You've now been extracted by a air quote device. You've been en route to the hospital. En route to the federal courthouse. You actually end up getting diverted to a hospital. They're conducting tests. And once you're released from the hospital, you will be taken to the loading dock of the federal courthouse. I can just see if you've ever been to a federal courthouse, they are these secure facilities now. You have the bollards out front. You've got security guards in the front of the courthouse. And then most federal courthouses have a garage where court personnel, particularly the judges and the magistrates, can go underground and park and not have to, fear for their safety as they park on the street or in a parking garage and walk to the courthouse. So almost every federal courthouse I've ever been in has a garage. And I can just see, and there's always security guards, standing around the garage. So the garage door goes up. A honking ambulance, which must be the size of an 18-wheeler, begins to, back up so they can take the defendant to the loading dock, where I guess the federal judge will then walk down to the loading dock, along with the bailiff and the prosecutors and the defense attorney and everybody else, so that the defendant can't we legalize the drugs? In this case, wouldn't it just be easier to legalize the drugs? I'm sorry. I couldn't resist. Where else are you going to hear about a 900-pound defendant being taken to the loading dock for his charges to be heard on his charges of conspiracy to possess and distribute cocaine? Man, where does he go? Never mind. Let's move on. Let's go to Colorado for a second. Colorado's governor has signed a bill. Now, when I heard about this yesterday, I thought to myself, it can't be true. And then before I actually looked into the story, I thought to myself, wait a minute. It's Colorado. The progressive liberals, the Marxists and the socialists and the fascists, they've all taken over the entire state of Colorado. So this must be true. Turns out that it is. Colorado's governor signed a bill establishing college funds for the state's newborn children for the next 20 years. College funds established by the state. Now, I feel this compulsion that I need to explain that State government, like federal government, really only gets the money that they have from taxes and fees. I did the whole bit about, I had to go register a new vehicle that I bought, that I stupidly bought before I ended up, in this position. But that's neither here nor there. I had to pay these fees and these taxes. And of course, I pay Colorado state income taxes, pay Colorado state sales taxes. I pay all these taxes to the state of Colorado. Now the state of Colorado, in its infinite wisdom, has decided that they're going to take money out of my pocket to establish a college fund for your kid. Now, your kid might be the most wonderful kid in the world. In fact, I'm sure you love your children, just as I love my children and I love my grandchildren. But Tamara and I, along with our children, already put money in a college fund, in one of those, whatever they're called, 409s or something. I forget what they are. Don't email me or text me or yell at me, but whatever those funds are. We already do that. We do that with our own money. There's just something that I find intrinsically wrong with the idea that the state of Colorado is going to take part of my taxes that I pay for, cops and firefighters and roads and bridges, all of which, not all of which, because all the firefighters and cops don't suck, but the roads and the bridges pretty much suck. And, a lot of other things in Colorado suck. And now the Denver Post reports that Democratic Governor Jared Polis signed the bill Monday that sets aside $100. Everybody bitches about the rising cost of college tuition and fees and everything else. So $100. Now, I know that compounding interest might, over the course of, 16, 17, 18 years, might actually increase that $100 to what? $1,000? I don't know. Somebody else do the math. The Denver Post reports that Democratic Governor Jared Polis signed the bill Monday that sets aside $100 for each child born or adopted in Colorado between 2020 and 2040. If you're thinking about having kids, don't copulate tonight. Wait and do the deed so that you have the child born in 2020, so you can get your $100 from me and the other state taxpayers in Colorado. Each child's money will be transferred to a post-secondary education savings account established by a parent. If an account is not open before a child turns 5, the money will remain in the state fund for another child. Officials say the state's contribution is adjusted for inflation and might be more than $100 per child in future years. Each child born or adopted in Colorado gets $100. I don't know about you, but it seems to me the state of Colorado should not be in the business of setting up college funds for children with tax dollars. Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? I'll tell you who I am. I'm a taxpayer. I'm a taxpayer that pays taxes, and if you want your kid to have a college fund, then get off your butt and open a college fund for your kid. What are we going to do? We've already in Colorado, we now have free kindergarten. We've got free preschool. We got free everything in Colorado. This state is going down the toilet faster than you can flush your own toilet. And we're sitting here just going on and on and on about, you know what? It's not our money. It is OPM, other people's money. So let me get a sip of Diet Coke, and let's get on to the next story. This is a serious story. Not that spending $100 of taxpayer money on funding a college fund for a kid that's not yours isn't serious, but it is stupid. It's dumbassery of the first degree. But there is a freshman congressman from the state of Michigan, Rashida Tlaib. She's one of, I think, 2 Muslim members of the United States Congress. And for once, I actually find myself agreeing with the contemptible Rashida Tlaib. She made some vile comments that she gets a calming feeling when she thinks about how Palestinians allegedly offered refuge to Jews fleeing the Holocaust. And she says that her words were twisted and taken out of context, which is what she tweeted over the weekend. So what do you do when you make some really stupid, dumbass comment about the Holocaust and, well, Palestinians, and you happen to be a Muslim? You do what every good liberal progressive does. You go on late night television and you try to explain yourself away. What she said in a May 10 podcast interview is actually much worse. And it wasn't a gaffe, and it wasn't even an example of her propagating the myth that Palestinians aided European Jews after World War II. This woman knew exactly what she was talking about. So let's go to the tape of her trying to explain it away on the Seth Meyers show, in which he gives her cover.
When did you actually record the podcast? I feel like
last week.
Okay, so it came out, and a lot of people have been talking about it, both sides of the aisle. You were talking about the tragedy of the Holocaust, and the words you used was it gave you a calming feeling because you were happy that it became a safe haven. Palestine became a safe haven for the Jewish people. Some have criticized the use of a calming feeling. You have said that it was taken out of context. I want to give you a chance to provide some context.
Yeah, and it's, so for folks that don't know, I mean, my grandmother, my living grandmother, my mom's mom, lives in the West Bank in the occupied territories of Palestine.
Oh, let's just stop right there for a moment. My living great-grandmother lives in the West Bank in the occupied territories of Palestine. I could just stop the whole story right there and say, yeah, she's anti-Semitic, because that's just false.
And what's incredibly, the tragedy of the Holocaust, I mean, the reason why Israel was created is to create a safe haven for Jews around the world. And there is something, like, in many ways beautiful about that. My ancestors, many had died or had to give up their livelihood, their human dignity, to provide a safe haven for Jews in our world. And that is something that I wanted to recognize and kind of honor in some sort of way. But I also think it's important because I want Palestinian people also to find some sort of, light in this kind of what's happening, but also, in the end, I said, I want all of us to feel safe. All of us deserve human dignity. No matter our backgrounds, no matter our ethnicity, no matter even our political opinions, we all deserve that kind of equality and justice. And, for me, I wanted to uplift that and bring that to light. And it was unfortunate. I got a text message from a friend who's like, hey, next time, really clarify, maybe talk like a fourth grader, because maybe the racist idiots would understand you better.
The racist idiots, those who claim that what she says is anti-Semitic, which is racist, because we point out her anti-Semitism, she conveniently points out or tries to project back on us her own racism. Oh, she's not done. Hang on.
So it's just, I will continue to speak truth to power and continue to uplift my grandmother through love. And that's all I can do is continue to share the human impact of what it means to be Palestinian in the occupied territories.
It's nice, I think, to have someone in Congress that as a Palestinian who has a platform, because obviously it happens very rarely. It's certainly in the media, you don't get the Palestinian perspective. It does. I actually think it wouldn't hurt for all of us to talk about the history of that part of the world on a fourth grade level, because I actually don't think a lot of us here understand it. And I think that there's a very, very...
Including you, Mr. Myers, I don't think you understand it either.
Bad faith argument was made today that you were calmed by the Holocaust.
Of course.
I think there was a good faith argument that maybe your history was not in alignment with everyone else.
Oh, so let's just talk about the history for a moment. You ready for a Michael Brown history lesson? The safe haven that Tlaib referred to is the state of Israel, which officially declared its independence 71 years ago, this past Tuesday. Make no mistake, Tlaib, who is a Muslim, who supports a Palestinian-backed one-state solution that could make Jews a minority in Israel, and in fact, over time, would alleviate, would remove all Jews from Israel. She views the formation of modern-day Israel as a crime against the Palestinian people. And then she soothes her rage with the fabulous belief that the sacrifices of Palestinians somehow paved the way for Israel to exist. Hence her weird, calming feeling remark. I don't know how anybody, in any context, can look upon the Holocaust and use the phrase, "It gives me a calming feeling." In context or out of context in any way, how do you, in the same sentence, use the word Holocaust and calming feeling? I truly tried to think about that, and I can't think of any way. And far from being an act of compassion by the Palestinian people, at least according to Congresswoman Tlaib, the creation of this so-called safe haven was actually violently forced upon the Palestinians after World War II. It was my ancestors, Palestinians, who lost their land and some lost their lives. Their human dignity, their existence in many ways has been wiped out. All of it was in the name of trying to create a safe haven for Jews post the Holocaust, post the tragedy and horrific persecution of Jews across the world, according to what she told reporters Michael Isikoff and Daniel Klaidman. But, she says, they did it in a way that took their dignity away, right? And it was forced on them. She then reiterated her claim later in the interview, quote, "I want a safe haven for Jews. Who doesn't want to be safe? I am humbled by the fact that it was my ancestors that had to suffer for that to happen." The Congresswoman is referring to the diaspora of Palestinians from now Israeli territory just before and after 1948, which happened for a number of reasons, including the reapportionment of the land and the threat of war. Now, the Arab countries, I think most Americans don't understand this. The Arab countries rejected the United Nations 1947 partition plan. And then 5 of Israel's Arab neighbors attacked Israel the day after it declared independence. So, far from trying to sugarcoat Palestinians' helpfulness in a post-Holocaust world, Tlaib was venting her anger about the 1948 establishment of the State of Israel, backed by the United Nations and backed by the United States. She's traveling to the region in August on a junket sponsored by the Humpty Dumpty Institute, and in a flyer distributed by her office, Tlaib asked her colleagues to join her on a, quote, congressional delegation to occupied territories in Palestine. Remember, she says that her grandmother or great-grandmother reportedly lives in the West Bank, which she describes as the occupied territories. During the trip, she explained, she wants her colleagues to see the injustice perpetrated against Palestinians by the Israelis. And she invokes her upbringing in Detroit, compares the plight of black Americans to that of Palestinians. She says, "I grew up in a city that is the most beautiful, blackest city in the country, the city of Detroit. I saw what oppression and inequality looks like. I saw that separate but equal doesn't work." She's 42 years old. You do the math. She claimed that being raised in an oppressed, segregated city is the lens that she brings to her support of the Palestinian-backed one-state solution. Now, when she's been pressed that she holds the same view as Hamas, Tlaib then babbles on that the difference between herself and the terrorist organization is that she comes from a place of love. That would be like saying that, I come from I'm not saying this. I'm saying this as a, kind of what she's trying to describe. It would be like me saying that I have the same views of Jews as Hitler, But my view of the Jews comes from a place of love. That's incongruous and it's incompatible. It's nonsensical. It's dumbassery. Now, you got to remember that Tlaib is the same lunatic who threatened to impeach the mother effer, referring to President Trump, the very night that she was sworn into office. But there were more anti-Semitic rantings during her interview. Her hatred for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is just oozes. You actually ought to look up her interview and watch it so you can get the full effect. According to Tlaib, Netanyahu is solely to blame for the condition of the Palestinian people and for a failure to bring peace to the region. She's condemned Netanyahu for supporting Trump's proposed security wall along the southern border, then claimed that Netanyahu wouldn't look her grandmother in the eye and say that you are equal to me. You are as human as I am to you, and yes, you deserve to die with human dignity. You know, her passing mention of the horrors of the Holocaust and her exploitation of the historical struggles of black Americans expose this basic instinct to leverage any tragedy so that she can traffic in her anti-Semitic garbage, and her repeated insistence that her only motivation is love expressed through gritted teeth, I think, is really just a tactic used by the most dishonest propagandist. You know, the reporter Isikoff even buys into her ploy, naming the podcast From Rashida with Love. This is the Orwellian world that we now live in. You know, the drumbeat of these anti-Semitic remarks from some of the outspoken Democratic members of the freshman class should actually alarm the leadership of the democratically controlled Congress. But it doesn't. You know, you might recall this congressional resolution originally intended to admonish anti-Semitic comments. It got so watered down by an intimidated Democratic leadership that it actually probably had the opposite effect and actually probably worked to encourage more aggressive anti-Semitism from those that it was targeted to. House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, the Democrat from Maryland, on Monday afternoon actually demanded an apology from congressional Republicans and from President Trump, not from Tlaib, but from Trump and all of the other Republicans who pointed out the anti-Semitism of her remarks. But both Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, the Democrat Muslim Congresswoman from Minnesota, I think are actually determined to agitate the flat-footed Democratic leadership on the subject of Israel. This is a ploy and a tactic. This is a strategy on their part. Both Muslim women support the BDS, the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanction movement, even though that pernicious campaign has been condemned by the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi. And as always, Omar accused Tlaib's critics of being Islamophobes. Now, these two have also questioned the so-called dual loyalty of lawmakers who support Israel, even accusing pro-Israel legislators of being paid off by Jewish lobbyists. Back on May 9, Tlaib joined the Women's March co-founder and anti-Semitic Linda Sarsour at an impeachment rally on Capitol Hill. You know, her comments are more than mere downplaying of the atrocity of the Holocaust or even intentionally misrepresenting historical fact to somehow try to put a shine on her heritage. It is, in my opinion, an attempt to delegitimize the existence of the State of Israel and to claim that it was created upon the persecution of Palestinians for the sake of creating this so-called safe haven for Jews after World War II. In other words, she's saying that Israel exists at the pleasure of the Palestinians and that its existence, its very existence, is otherwise illegitimate. She and her ilk are anti-Semites. They don't even believe in the right of Israel to exist. Hamas, just like the Iranians, continue to call for the destruction of Israel, for the wiping of Israel off the map. Why is this so dangerous? Well, one, first and foremost, it's racist. It's just out and out, unadulterated racism. But if we don't understand not only the historical and the biblical importance of Israel in the Middle East, if you don't understand that and you don't want to understand that, okay, set that aside. Instead, look at the international diplomatic importance of Israel in the Middle East. Israel has, if you've never been to Israel, you would be shocked. I think most people would be shocked to learn of the number of Muslims, Arabs, and others that actually live in Israel. Most people see Israel from this lens of across halfway around the world as this monolithic Jewish state, when it really isn't. But its importance in maintaining peace in the Middle East is unassailable. Without this democratic republic in the middle of all of this other, these tyrannical and authoritarian governments that surround Israel, there would just be this conflagration. There would just be, there's no stability but for Israel being in the Middle East. And for those who say that Israel is a destabilizing effect in the Middle East, then you don't understand what would happen if it were to be jerked off from the face of the earth and all of the competing factions of Islam in Iran, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Syria, Yemen, all begin to fight each other. It would, in my opinion, be the start of World War III. And I believe that with all my heart. I haven't talked about climate change in a while, and I'm only going to talk about climate change for maybe 1 minute. Bill Nye, the pseudo-science guy, put out a tweet. I had to bleep it because I don't want my podcast to be marked explicit. But as I look down on the WAV file for this soundbite, I see I have 3 bleeps, 3 F-bombs, and a mother effer, all trying to convince you and me, I guess, or maybe just playing to his own audience that if we don't do something, well, we're all going to die.
Safety glasses on. By the end of this century, if emissions keep rising, the average temperature on Earth could go up another 4 to 8 degrees. What I'm saying is the planet's on fucking fire. There are a lot of things we could do to put it out. Are any of them free? No, of course not. Nothing's free, you idiots. Grow the up. You're not children anymore. I didn't mind explaining photosynthesis to you when you were 12, but you're adults now, and this is an actual crisis. Got it? Safety glasses off, motherfuckers.
Yeah, all right. Well, I'm convinced. Aren't you? It's time. We're all going to die. We're all going to die within 12 years. Or maybe it's 11 and a half years now because, time flies by so quickly. I'm not really sure when the 12 years started because, it was 10 years, 20 years, 30 years ago, and then it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, then it was 10 years, 10 years ago, and now we're in the middle of the end of 3 10-year periods, and now it's going to be 12 years, so we're maybe, 4 or 5 months into that, so, yeah, run for the hills. Mayor de Blasio, the mayor of New York City, proves my point that we are governed by the ruling elite. Mayor de Blasio's New York PD SUV was cruising the wrong way with lights and sirens blaring when it got into a car crash, driving the wrong way on a one-way street. if my security detail had ever done that, I would have had them all fired, and they would have lost all their clearances and be gone. But hey, it's New York City. Anyway, so they're driving the wrong way on a busy street, lights and sirens blaring. He got into a car crash, sparking a frantic cover-up by his security detail, according to an accident report obtained by the Daily News. NYPD Detective Edgar Robles was driving west against traffic on East 135th Street in the unmarked black Chevy Tahoe when he collided with a boiler truck at 5th Avenue at 8:15 in the morning on Saturday, back in August 2015. 2015. The mayor and two other detectives were in the vehicle at the time. Both City Hall and the New York Police Department declined to say whether the mayor was running late. But in an appearance Friday on WNYC's The Brian Lehrer Show, de Blasio expressed his displeasure with reckless drivers on e-bikes cruising on the wrong side of the street. He told the news station, quote, "We've seen them," these reckless drivers on e-bikes, "going the wrong way, weaving through traffic, going up the sidewalks, all the things that many, many New Yorkers find dangerous and unsettling, and they can reach very high speeds," the mayor said. When they finally got the cover-up uncovered 4 years later, the accident report indicates the boiler truck was making a legal left turn onto 5th Avenue when the mayor's SUV crashed into it. Marvin Woodruff, 39, told the cops at the time, "I was making a left turn onto 5th Avenue and he overtook me and hit me." Robles, meanwhile, blamed the truck driver. He told the cops, "As I approached 5th Avenue, I stopped and inched up to clear the intersection when he hit my rear passenger side of the SUV." Robles, the security detail driver, was determined to be at fault. The driver of the incident was verbally instructed regarding the impact of the safe vehicle operation. The use of emergency equipment in the NYPD vehicle used to transport the mayor is up to the judgment and discretion of the detectives and supervisors assigned to the security detail, meaning that the laws that you and I have to obey. If you and I were caught driving the wrong way on 5th Avenue, which is a one-way street, and we caused an accident, we'd lose our license. And if it was someone like me, local newspapers might pick it up and, look, former Undersecretary of Homeland Security caught driving the wrong way on a one-way street, causes an accident. They'd have blasted it all over the place. But if you're a member of the ruling elite, as I continue to try to point out, they're different than you and me. Yeah. When they put their pants on, or their pantyhose, or their bras, their blouses, because the ruling elite, male and female, or whatever they identify as, they're different than you and me. Their clothing just magically appears on them, and they just magically drive the wrong way down the street. And then when they cause an accident, it gets buried for 5 years. Yeah, they're different than you and me, and it drives me nuts. There's no reason for it. And if you ever think that there's a difference, just imagine what would happen to you driving the wrong way on a busy avenue like 5th Avenue and then getting the report covered up. A show that I never watched is not coming back. I find it funny. We are turning the final season into a large TV event. We are trying to go out guns a-blazing. I'm not really sure that that's a good thing to say when you're the producer of the formerly hit TV show Empire. You know, the one that Jussie Smollett used to be on, and then he didn't think he was getting paid enough, so he faked a hate crime on a Wednesday night when Chicago was going through that Arctic blast of cold air. Polar vortex. to use the politically correct term. Chicago was suffering a polar vortex, and he's out going to get a Subway sandwich at 1 o'clock in the morning, which I do all the time. I'm all the time. You know, I need a 6-inch, I need a 12-inch sandwich from Subway. And I get up at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. It's 20 below zero, and the wind's howling at 60 miles an hour, and the next thing I know, just like Jussie Smollett, I'm getting attacked, a noose put around my neck, some sort of liquid thrown on my face, called the N-word, and everything else. At least that's what Jussie arranged, and turned out to be a complete hoax. And, of course, you know, when I talk about the ruling elite, we should also talk about the Hollywood elite, because, as we all know, he didn't have to pay restitution for all the investigation of a hate crime. All he had to do was simply forfeit the bond that he had already put up, something like $10,000, and then he just walks away and nobody ever says anything, because there is the Hollywood elite also. And as long as they're around, well, then there's nothing that we can ever do about it except that recognize it and recognize it for what it is. So the Attorney General of the United States, Bill Barr, has appointed the Connecticut U.S. Attorney to review the origins of the Trump-Russia investigation. And I say to that, hallelujah. Absolutely hallelujah. Attorney General William Barr has asked Connecticut U.S. Attorney John Durham to investigate the origins of the government's probe into possible collusion between Donald Trump's campaign and Russia. The decision to do this, to make this appointment, comes after they received the special counsel's report, which showed no collusion happened between the two parties. Now, back in April, Barr told a Senate committee that he believed that, quote, spying did occur. Now, we all know that the FBI director, Christopher Wray, disagreed with the description of spying. But when Bill Barr said that spying occurred, that got all the attention. What should have got the attention was what he said after that. He said spying did occur, and he wants to know, quote, whether it was adequately predicated, meaning was there a basis for this spying, which when you do wiretaps, that's a form of spying. Look it up in the dictionary. The Attorney General said that the Department of Justice will investigate the origins of the surveillance and that the investigation has already taken its first steps. The New York Times reports that John Durham, the U.S. Attorney in Connecticut, has a history of serving as a special prosecutor investigating potential wrongdoing among national security officials, including the FBI's ties to crime boss in Boston, Whitey Bulger, and accusations of CIA abuses of detainees. His inquiry is the third known investigation focused on the opening of the FBI counterintelligence investigation. Let me just stop for a moment. A counterintelligence investigation. Spy versus spy. Spying on the spies. Counterintelligence. It's spying. The Trump administration has wanted to know for years why the FBI even triggered this investigation into his campaign. Now, Fox News says that it has heard from sources that Barr is serious and that he has assigned multiple Department of Justice personnel to the probe. Fox News says sources familiar with the matter say the focus of the probe includes the pre-transition period, meaning prior to November 7, 2016, including the use and initiation of informants, as well as potential Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA, abuses. Fox goes on to say that an informant working for U.S. intelligence who posed as a Cambridge University research assistant in September 2016 to try extracting any possible ties between the Trump campaign and Russia from George Papadopoulos, then a Trump foreign policy advisor. It emerged earlier this month. Papadopoulos told Fox News the informant tried to seduce him as part of the bizarre episode. Now, here's the other thing that you need to understand about why I think this is why Democrats are trying to hold Bill Barr in contempt, why they want to do, maybe even impeach him. They want to remove him from office. And here's why. The Department of Justice Inspector General, a guy by the name of Michael Horowitz, had already started his own investigation into potential surveillance abuses by the FBI. That investigation began last March and is almost near its completion. So by appointing a Department of Justice career prosecutor that already has a record of investigating wrongdoing by criminal investigations, counterintelligence investigations, CIA activities, I think this is a way for the Attorney General to latch on to what the Inspector General's doing, because all the Inspector General can do, he's basically doing an investigation, but he can't prosecute. So once that investigation is completed and then turned over to the Attorney General, he can simply hand it to this U.S. attorney. The U.S. attorney already has, 90% or more of the investigation done, and he can start indicting individuals. Perhaps former FBI Director James Comey. Perhaps former FBI agents Strzok and Page. Perhaps any number of officials who violated or what's her face? I can't think of the national Rice, Susan Rice, the national security she was ambassador to the UN and then national security advisor to Barack Obama at the very end, who apparently authorized some of these FISA warrants. This may go really, really deep. And I think that's why the Democrats are doing everything they can to somehow stop Bill Barr from doing what he should be doing. And that's trying to discover the truth about how this investigation got started. I had dinner with some friends last night talking about some business stuff. And one of the individuals that was there with a friend of mine, someone I was just getting to know, had a lot of questions about, what took place, because he works in D.C., he had a lot of questions about what took place in some of the congressional hearings. And I talked about how once it was determined that President Bush and the Bush White House was not going to invoke executive privilege, and that I was then free to testify about my conversations with the president and the chiefs of staff about what was going on in New Orleans, that I found that liberating being able to speak the truth. That only happened once we knew there was not going to be an invocation of executive privilege, and I was no longer a member of the administration. I was no longer a federal employee. Rod Rosenstein, the former Deputy Attorney General, who just retired a few weeks ago, spoke to a group, and I can hear in his voice and I can hear in the words that same liberation when he talks about how former FBI Director Comey was ripping him.
So I do not blame the former director for being angry. I would be too if I were in his shoes. But now the former director seems to be acting as a partisan pundit, selling books and earning speaking fees while speculating about the strength of my character and the fate of my immortal soul. I kid you not. That is disappointing. Speculating about souls is not a job for police and prosecutors.
I love that line. Speculating about souls is not the job of police or investigators. Amen and amen. Speaking of police, the Popo received a call around 7:30 p.m. that there was a naked man playing basketball at the, for that moment, unfortunately named Candyland Park. And the Popo responded accordingly. When officers from the Longwood Police Department arrived, they found Jordan Anderson, age 29, playing basketball with 2 balls too many. When they asked Anderson why he was Dikembe Mutombo, wagging his, all over the public court, Anderson said it was because he thought playing naked would help improve his basketball skills. Presumably, the popo then looked at his face and arrested him. Anderson was later charged with indecent exposure of sexual organs. But here's the bottom line, though. Who hasn't wanted to play basketball in the nude, right? Now, I don't know whether you want to do it because you think it's going to improve your skills or not, or whether it's just that feeling of liberation, that feeling of, well, let's see if I can dunk it, right? But it really does beg the question, does practicing basketball while naked actually help to improve your skills? Even maybe? Think about all the distractions that come into play in a basketball game. Stuff that throws your shot off or gets in your head. Those are the sorts of things that a good basketball player has to learn to deal with and ignore. And none of those distractions are as distracting as a gust of wind blowing directly onto your genitals or playing under the assumption that at any moment the popo are going to show up and taser or pepper spray you, and possibly some of that, the taser might just land in a very unfortunate spot, or the pepper spray, might just accidentally get there. Yeah, I think maybe playing basketball in the nude and worrying about how all of those things might happen might actually be a way of honing your skills. Honing your skills. To prop up their narrative, liberals can never get enough of hate crimes. If you are new to this podcast or you've not heard me on the radio before, let me tell you my philosophy about hate crimes. I hate hate crimes, and here's why. If you murder someone, that's the crime. You have illegally taken away someone's life. Now, when you murder someone, whether it is out of, the heat of passion, or you're just angry, or you hate them, does it really make any difference? No. You've committed the murder. If you commit assault with a deadly weapon, and you do it because you're a white Aryan nation, white supremacist attacking a black man, or you commit assault with a deadly weapon, and you're a member of the new Black Panthers, just picking on some dumb white person, does it make any difference whether there's prejudice, bigotry, or hatred involved? No. You have committed a crime. Piling on and saying you've committed assault with a deadly weapon, or you've committed the act of murder, but we're also going to charge you with a hate crime. You did it with hate and bigotry in your heart. Are you freaking kidding me? Charge them with the actual crime. Because now hate crimes, mark my words, we already have, like with the red flag laws, where people are trying to anticipate, we got to take Michael Brown's guns away because we think he might commit a crime. Hate crimes are on that same trajectory, where we are now trying to anticipate whether people might commit a crime. A hate crime says, yes, you murdered somebody. Now we're also going to charge you that you murdered somebody and you did it with hatred in your heart. Now are we going to eventually progress to the point where we have thought crimes? We know that you didn't actually physically attack somebody, but we knew you were thinking about it. It's a hate crime. I hate hate crimes. Liberals can never get enough of that. And hate hoaxes. Speaking of Empire, the cancellation of that show that I never watched, never cared about, and Jussie Smollett faking a hate crime hoaxes are out of control too. But I think we need more. Fortunately for the agenda of liberals, there is now an app for that. Emily Nicolosi, a researcher, and Richard Medina, a professor of geography, along with DigitLab, developed an app that allows people to report incidents of hate. The first of its kind, the app accepts reports beyond crimes captured in police records. Users from around the country can document all incident types, from derogatory epithets written in bathrooms to slurs yelled from a car window, in addition to violent assaults. Now, this app is now available on Google Play. The Hate Incident Reporting System. That's not a very good acronym. HIRS. HERS. The Hate Incident Reporting System is available on Google Play. The idea is to inflate hate incident statistics to maximum possible by recording everything that these stupid snowflakes choose to be offended by. Now, all the reporting is confidential, so you don't even have to take responsibility for reporting a so-called, air quote, a so-called hate crime. Now, if you get the app, you can categorize hate incidents as propaganda, property damage, verbal, and violent. Now, imagine if the dumbasses were to use the app to report every propaganda attack against conservatives, Christians, whites, or just average Joe Americans in general they see while they're watching television or reading mainstream publications. Might overload the system. Might break down the system. Might break it down completely. Who knows? Let me get a sip of Diet Coke and we'll move on. So, yes. For all of you lovers of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, I apologize that I've not really had much of AOC to report on lately, but, you're in for a treat today. She thinks that oil and gas companies are killing kids with cancer. Yeah, somehow oil and gas companies are killing kids with cancer. And we need to start paying people what they need to live. I'm all for that. I don't know what your lifestyle is, and I don't know how much money you, again, air quotes, need, but I need a whole bunch of money. I need a boatload of money. So I'm all for this program.
And for years of denial and years of abdication of leadership and responsibility, we finally are stepping into that void, taking our future for ourselves, and we will change this country, and we will change the future to be more just. Because the logic that we are fighting against right now, this is not just about putting solar panels on our homes. We are fighting against a logic.
Wait a minute. I thought the Green New Deal was all about renewable energy, that it was about the, abolition of use of fossil fuels and coming up with this fantastical way of creating energy that would allow us to not only do all of the things that we now do, but would allow us to still produce all of the products that we use that are carbon-based. No, apparently it's more about social justice issues. Man, you learn something new every day.
That says poisoning and giving communities cancer is okay if an oil company can post a Q1 profit.
So all of you that work in the oil and gas industry, directly or indirectly, or all of you even better, that benefit from the oil and gas industry, directly or indirectly. You own a restaurant, you own a cafe, a diner, and the oil and gas workers frequent your diner. Well, they'll go away. Everybody benefits directly or indirectly from the oil and gas industry. But the evil oil and gas industry only cares about Q1 profits and whether or not that causes cancer, they don't care. I'm curious, Q1 profits. Is AOC aware that there's a Q2, a Q3, and a Q4? I'm just wondering.
We're here to say no more.
Oh, and the youthful idiots clap like crazy.
What we are fighting against is a logic that says it is okay to pay someone less than they need to live. And we are here to say no more.
Okay, I'm for that. So I make X amount of dollars per year. That's really not enough for me to live on the way I think that I should live on. So I need X times 3. So all you need to pony up. Yeah. We need to be paying people what they need to live the way they want to live. She may be onto something here. I'm all for this. And the youthful idiots again.
And what we are also fighting against is a logic that says we can extract enough off of human life and our environmental resources to the point of destroying our own humanity just to post profit no more. We will not accept that anymore. We cannot accept that anymore.
Yeah. Profits. Evil profits. I wonder if she's ever thought. This is a serious question. I wonder if she has ever thought about what profits mean. What happens to profits? What happens when a company makes profits? Well, the profit enables the company to grow. It enables the shareholder, the value of the shares that grandmother or granddad might have in a company, in a mutual fund or in a 401k or a IRA. It allows those shares to grow in value. Profits allow companies to come up with new products and services that make our lives better. Profits are wonderful. But who needs profits? Because if we go to someone like Bernie Sanders, we're going to destroy profits and raise taxes.
You're talking about Medicare for all. You're in the second largest insurance capital in the country here in Des Moines, and there are people who would like to keep their private insurance. Is that possible under that plan?
No, I think right now what we should appreciate.
You're talking about Medicare.
I'm sorry, I wanted to stop that. No, it's not possible to keep your private insurance company. Once again, the party that tells me that they are about choice, particularly when it comes to a woman's body. I guess a woman's body is just the epitome of everything. Now, for heterosexual males, yeah, we think women's bodies should be on a pedestal. But putting that aside, why is it that choice is sacrosanct? That is a choice that shall not be deprived. But all other choices, in every other facet of life, they want to take away, and they just want that to be done by government.
For all, you're in the second largest insurance capital in the country here in Des Moines, and there are people who would like to keep their private insurance. Is that possible under that plan?
No, I think right now what we should appreciate is that every year many, many millions of people lose their health insurance because they leave their jobs or because their employer changes their insurance policies. I think what most Americans feel is that Medicare currently, which applies to people 65 years of age or older, is a very strong program. It is a popular program. There is no reason why we should continue to pay twice as much per capita for health care than do the people of any other nation.
Maybe it's because the health care we get is better than any of those other nations that you keep referring to. they're just ignorant. They're utterly ignorant. When you think of the rationing that goes on in the United Kingdom because of the cost overruns in the National Health Service, they're rationing because they don't have the tax dollars. They can't take any more money out of the pockets of Brits to pay for the national health system. So they're rationing. But somehow that law of economics will never apply in the United States. These people are truly useful idiots.
And yet have so many people uninsured or underinsured with high deductibles and co-payments. So I believe that if we want to provide health care to all in a cost-effective way, if we want to lower the outrageous price of prescription drugs in this country, the way to go is Medicare for all.
And
what I love about that, when you think about the VA hospital in Denver. For those of you who don't know about the VA hospital in Denver, that facility was subject to so many congressional inquiries and investigations, although it didn't mean squat, because the cost overruns, when the government tried to build the hospital, it ended up costing billions more than anticipated. But somehow, magically, if we turn over the entire healthcare industry in this country, I assume insurance would become Medicare, pharmaceuticals would become nationalized. All of these things become nationalized, that somehow the federal government is going to be able to reduce those costs. You know, just like when the federal government took over the student loan program, and suddenly tuition and fees and the cost of higher education just skyrocketed. Why do we not understand this? Because it's a catchy phrase, Medicare for all. It sounds so loving to put it in Tlaib's words.
And what you hear people asking is, how do we pay for that?
Well, we're paying for it right now.
We're paying for it right now because I'm choosing how and where to spend my health care dollars. I make my own determination, but you want to take my premium costs away. This is how it works. This is how Bernie Sanders sees it. He wants to take away what I pay for health insurance premiums. And let's just say, for sake of argument, that's $500 a month. Pay $500 a month for health insurance. So that premium will go away. But my taxes will go up. Do you believe, for even a New York minute, do you believe that your cost of health care will go down? The cost of drugs will decrease? Because I remember somewhere in ancient history, this must have been like when I was, 4 years old or something. I remember a president telling us over and over and over that his plan would allow me to keep my doctor, and that his plan would reduce the average premium for families to $2,500 per year. Do you remember that guy? Do you remember what happened? They lie and they lie and they lie, and the useful idiots just continue to buy into it.
Spending twice as much per capita on healthcare as do the people of any other country. And in many ways, our healthcare outcomes are not as good. So we're paying for it. What our bill does, and sometimes, we're up against the insurance companies and the drug companies who are going to spend tens of millions of dollars trying to defeat us. But what people should understand is that what Medicare for All does is it eliminates your private health insurance premiums. You're not going to be paying that. You're not going to be paying co-payments. You're not going to be paying deductibles. You're going to be seeing your prescription drug cost, in my view, come down by 50%. Will you be paying more in taxes? Yes, you will.
So we're going to be paying more in taxes for this, but the costs will go down. And AOC's new Green Deal, which is supposed to give us renewable energy, instead is going to obliterate most of the goods and services that we get because of oil and gas, because of carbon, because of fossil fuels. And then those costs of power and electricity and everything are going to skyrocket. Oh, and by the way, the Green New Deal is also about making sure that we all get paid what we should get paid. And I should get paid much more than I am. So pony up, people. Let's get a couple of taxpayer relief shots. A video, this comes to us from Bowling Green, Kentucky. A video taken from a man's home security camera. I watched this video. This is amazing. Video taken from a man's home security camera shows the moment that 4 armed intruders break down his front door and enter the residence. The home invaders can be seen walking carefully, with the lead man turning into a hallway where he was met with a hail of bullets, courtesy of the homeowner's gun. The intruders rush back out the front door, firing back. WLKY in Bowling Green reports that the homeowner said that he was asleep when he heard them breaking in. During the firefight, the homeowner was shot in his right hand. He was transported to the hospital. The Popos say the suspects will be facing attempted murder and burglary charges. Warren County Sheriff Brett Hightower said, "It kind of plays into with what the mindset of those individuals were when they forcibly made entry into somebody's home, came in there armed, and attempting to locate somebody or something and exchanging gunfire with them and shooting somebody. It's invaluable to have that type of video footage." And I might add, it's invaluable to be armed so that you can defend yourself. Columbus, Ohio is our next taxpayer relief shot.
And killed in a shooting at an East Side smoke shop from overnight. Around 1 this morning, officers were called to the
1 a.m. Oh, it's the prime time for a taxpayer relief shot.
Store just off of McNaughton Road by an employee who was involved in an altercation with a customer. The customer, who's now been identified as Oscar Morgan Jr., was reportedly intoxicated and armed with a gun. Witnesses say Morgan engaged in several physical altercations to the point where an employee felt the need to shoot and kill him. Police are currently evaluating all video evidence gathered at the incident. No charges have been filed.
And I doubt charges will be filed. So you walk in armed, trying to commit an armed robbery, a fight ensues, and as you are struggling with someone with a gun, you finally are able to pull out your concealed carry gun and you're able to neutralize the threat. Good for them. That's why we celebrate taxpayer relief shots. Not because somebody died, but because that person was committing a crime, but because an innocent person was able to defend their own life and defend their own property. That's why we do taxpayer relief shots. Thanks for listening to this edition of Michael Brown Unplugged. As usual, I ask you to go to the website, michaelbrowntoday.com, michaelbrowntoday.com. You'll find there where you can stream or download this podcast. We're also up on Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. We've made application to iTunes, so we should be up on iTunes pretty soon, I think. We're still waiting to hear back from iHeart about being on the iHeart app. But right now, go to michaelbrowntoday.com, and that's where you'll see the Spreaker symbol over there. That's where you can download or stream this podcast. I would also ask you that while you're at michaelbrowntoday.com, that you go to the icons, the social media icons across the bottom. And I would ask you to follow me on Facebook, subscribe to the YouTube page, follow me on LinkedIn, follow me on Instagram and Twitter. And rather than spell out all of those, all you have to do is go to michaelbrowntoday.com and you'll find the social media icons. Click those, like those, follow those, subscribe to those, and do me a favor. Share the podcast. The numbers continue to grow, but you know me, I want to keep them growing even more. I'm even competitive with myself. So share the podcast if you like it. Share it with your friends. Let them know. Share the website, michaelbrowntoday.com, and then I'll talk to you tomorrow.